One of the realities of becoming a leader is that you sometimes create enemies. Today we're going to talk about picking your enemies wisely. Hello again everyone, I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, we lead, and we inspire. And we are working on a series of leadership secrets of Attila the Hun from a book of that title by a gentleman named Wess Roberts, PhD, who's helped us quite a bit on this series, obviously. So once again, let's get right to it. Let's talk about some of the circumstances that happen when you're a leader, and picking your enemies wisely is something that is critical to understand. Now, you chieftains and Huns, I, Attila, have need to counsel you on how to choose your enemies. Most conflicts in our lives within the Hunnish nation, between our tribes, our chieftains, or among the people, seldom is our real enemy a Roman. Only infrequently will an enemy from outside have the stature and skill that will enable him or her to defeat us on the battlefield or in diplomacy, for we are Huns. Being somewhat wise in the ways of Huns, yet naive in things that cause conflict, most of you are totally unaware when you make enemies. If you would set aside your tendencies to be unwilling to yield to another when appropriate, to let your feelings of inadequacy and insecurity prevail in situations warranting reason, to let your vanity become expedient over appreciating others' worth displays of competence, and if you would hesitate before inappropriately influencing others, we would have more peace in our camps and have our energies in harmony when we face the Romans, whom I have chosen as our enemy. In dealing with other Huns, and particularly with Romans, we must be cunning insofar as we should make enemies only with purpose. As I reflect on my observations and experience, it has served me well to be aware of a few dangers of making enemies without intent. These pitfalls are perils to your effectiveness as chieftains and warriors. Learn these, my secrets, well. Here's the first one. Do not expect everyone to agree with you, even if you are the king. Kind of self-explanatory. When you're in a position of leadership, there are people for all sorts of reasons, some of them valid, that aren't going to agree with you. It's part of the deal. Accept it. Do not waste stamina trying to negotiate with implacable, uncooperative enemies. Conquer them by more effective means. When I think of that, I think of the movie Gandhi. Gandhi, if you know anything about history, took India as a possession of the British and made it an independent country. And they were treated as second-hand citizens in their own country by the conquering British. So what did Gandhi do? Well, he wasn't going to overpower them. They had superior weaponry, manpower, so on and so forth. So what did he do? He used other means. He protested. When just did things where people could see that there was an injustice. Martin Luther King did exactly the same thing when in the civil rights movement, right? He was willing to be arrested. He was willing to let the police or whatever authority was out there, civil disobedience, but we don't fight back. So, and that's not always the way to do it, but what I'm saying is when you can't negotiate sometimes with uncooperative enemies, you've got to find a different way to get your point across and to win a victory. Do not consider all opponents to be enemies. You may have productive, friendly confrontations with others inside and outside your tribe. Okay, I have some people that I work with that have completely different views on a number of different subjects. Two that come to mind immediately are gun control and getting vaccinated. And these are people that, to me, it's like such common sense. My position on these, on these difficulties, on these challenges, gun control and vaccination, to me it makes complete common sense. But to them, their common sense tells them something different. So, no matter what I say, I'm not going to convince them. No matter what they say, they're not going to convince me. There are many, many more things that we agree on. Let's stick with those. Let's not talk about those things where we're not ever going to agree. There's no reason to inflame somebody that can be a friend and turn them into a foe by doing that. Common sense. Do not try to conform everyone's behavior unless doing so is critical to tribal discipline or purpose. Here we go. What do you do when it's really, really, really important? Okay, two things come to mind. The first one is, since we had, 9/11, the security at the airport, without probable cause, you were allowed to be searched and all those types of things, but it's for the greater good. It's for the greater good. It's critical to the survival of the people, for the safety of the people. And, this thing with the vaccination seems to me to be getting very, very close to that same thing. We're seeing, an outbreak right now. It's stemming from the people that are not vaccinated. The ones that are vaccinated, they still catch it, but they don't, they're not in danger. The people that are not vaccinated are the ones that are putting their lives in danger. Not only that, though, but they're putting everyone's lives in danger. It's not just a selfish thing. It's something for everybody, because the longer this thing lingers, the more mutations we're going to have. And when you get a mutation that's going to be stronger than the vaccinations, then we're going to be in a world of hurt. We're going to be starting at ground zero. We don't object to a polio vaccine or a measles vaccine or a chickenpox vaccine. For the life of me, I can't understand why we can't embrace this. But once again, some people, it's not worth arguing with them, because never going to convince them. But if it becomes mandatory, then that's something else again. If it's for the good of the tribe, and the tribe is, like, in this case, the world. Anyway, that's my viewpoint on that. Do not try to conform everyone's behavior. Okay, we talked about that one. Do not delegate an assignment and then attempt to manage it yourself. You'll make an enemy of the overruled subordinate. When you delegate something, it's very important that you be clear on what it is you expect that person to do, because you're delegating the assignment. But once you do that, you can't keep sticking your nose in. You can inspect to see how they're doing. As a matter of fact, you definitely want to expect to inspect, and then inspect to expect, to make sure that you're getting what you want. But once you give that assignment, let that person do the job. Let that person use their creativity. They know what you want. Give them the opportunity, because if you don't, if you micromanage everything, you're not going to develop your leaders, and you're going to lose a bond with that person, which is, the reason you delegated it to them was because you thought you can do the job. Give them that opportunity. Sometimes you're going to do so knowing that they're going to fail, but make it a learning experience. Do not lose your temper without advantageous reason. Wow. You always, as a leader, don't want to let them see you sweat. But sometimes you really need to make a point. And when you lose your temper, people will say, wow, that guy never loses his temper. When you do, you're really making an exclamation point to the challenge that you want to overcome. And we do that, Bob Anderson, I saw him do that a zillion times. He would go into an office, and start off nice and so on and so forth. And then explode into something, and he got everybody's attention when he did that. And it's not something that you're not familiar with. I mean, as a parent, when your child makes a mistake or needs to be corrected, you want to be nice, but when it becomes, too severe, when it's like, too important a thing, then you have to raise your voice. Then you have to take a form of discipline. Does what I'm saying make sense? So be very careful when you raise your voice, because you want that to be like a heads up, like, hey, this is really important. This is why I'm raising my voice. If you do it all the time, then it's meaningless when you do raise your voice, isn't it? Do not underestimate the power of an enemy, no matter how great or small, to rise against you on another day. When I think of that, the first thing I think of is that scene from The Godfather where really young Vito Corleone his brother is killed and his dad is killed, and then the mom brings him to the person that's the Godfather in Sicily and says, let him live, leave us alone, we're not going to do anything. And the guy looks at her and says, no. And he says, because someday he's going to grow up and he's going to take revenge on me. He's not going to forget. And if you remember in the movie, he was exactly right, okay? Because Robert De Niro, playing Vito Corleone, did go back and did take care of this guy. So don't underestimate the power of an enemy, no matter how great or how small. Do not let your chosen enemy have the advantage in any situation. When years ago, I was working with the library, and they were having negotiations. Every so often they have there's a union, and they have negotiations for, a raise in pay, a salary increase. And so, I went to the meeting. I wasn't one of the big shots in the union. I was just a member, and they were talking about having the meeting, and the meeting was going to be held in the lawyer's office of management. Okay, so there's management versus labor. Management has an attorney. Where they were going to have the meeting was in the lawyer's office. And I said to them, no, don't let them have the meeting there. That's not where you want to have it. That gives them a home court advantage. You don't want to do that. Did they listen to me? No, they didn't. We got like a 0.5% raise that year, which was like nothing. The point is, you've got to be cognizant of different advantages, and one of the things they say about the White House is it gives big advantage to the president where he's sitting in his office, and that's true. You want to have those advantages, but as somebody, when you're in a negotiating scenario, don't be giving advantages to your enemy. Not a good thing to do. Do not neglect the opportunity to deceive your enemy. Make him think of you as a friend. Let him think of you as weak. Let him act prematurely. And never tell him anything. When I think of that particular phrase, the person I think about is Bill Belichick. His people have been told, do not say anything that can possibly cause our opponent for the next game to get riled up. That's not something we want to do. We want to, we're nice, we're easy, we compliment the other team. Boy, they're really great. Boy, we're lucky to even be on the same field as they. And that's the modus operandi that you want to have as a winner. Let them think that you're weak. Let them think that, let them act prematurely. Let them make the mistake. Don't give clues. Don't say anything that can possibly benefit the enemy. Do not make enemies who are not worthy of your every effort to render them into a state of complete ineffectiveness. When I think of that, what I think about is the posture that the United States took during World War II. The war was going on in Europe. Some of our closest allies were battling with Hitler, and we were taking the posture that we were going to be neutral, we were going to stay out of it, stay out of it, stay out of it, stay out of it. And then push came to shove, and every effort was made to render Germany into a state of complete ineffectiveness. We went to battle, to total war with them. So we were in a position of neutrality. We didn't want to make an enemy, but once we decided to do that, then we were giving it our all. So be cognizant of that. Keep your neutrality, keep your poise about you, but when the time comes to make the move on your enemy, then you got to go after it full bore. Do not fail to use an enemy's weakness to your advantage. On the other hand, when it becomes apparent that an enemy is too formidable, retreat and return another day when you can conquer him. You know what that made me think of? It made me think of our previous administration, Mr. Trump, and Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci had some things he wanted to say, but President Trump was not particularly in favor of his policies. So Dr. Fauci said what he could say on kind of an even level, didn't want to upset the boss, and then he lived another day. Now he's in a position where there's somebody that's more cooperative with the scientific viewpoint on this virus. Now he's stepping up and he's saying more and more things. Do you follow what I'm saying? It was useless, it was a lose-lose situation for Dr. Fauci to rub the president the wrong way. He did what he could. He was very aware of where the line was drawn. Sometimes he overstepped it just a bit, and then the president would put him to the side. But if you want to be a person of influence, if you want to be a leader, you've got to recognize when it's time to just cool your jets, to live another day so that you can be more productive in your objective. Do not insult unless you mean it. Very, very important. As a leader especially, but even not being a leader, be very careful about what you say, because it will have a lasting effect. People don't forget. They don't forget. It's a lot of times, you see people on Twitter or on Facebook or something like that where they'll say something, and then they'll say, oh, I was hacked, okay, or, I shouldn't have said that, I made a mistake. They're hitting the send button, okay? You got a send button right here, your mouth. All right, don't hit the send button. Keep it to yourself. And don't insult unless you absolutely mean it and recognize that you're going to be making an enemy of that person for a long, long time. Don't burn your bridges unnecessarily. It should be sufficient for all Huns to recognize that when they exercise unbridled antagonism, create useless jealousy and hatred of their very being, their actions may serve to persuade even friends to become foes. A chieftain will not be followed long by Huns who despise him. Once again, big shout out to Wess Roberts, PhD, author of Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun. Next time we get together, more secrets. These are little intricate details about leadership that you have to be told, you have to be taught. It's not something they teach you in school. It's something that a mentor teaches you. It's something that gets passed down. Common sense, common practice. It's very important to recognize that those skills are different in leadership than they are as part of the rank and file. And always remember, hey, don't ration the passion, fashion the passion. I'm Eli's dad.